I'm not going to lie to you and be like, I got the social secretary position. So like, I was on top of the world. I was just like, oh my God, this hair's out of place. Oh my God, they're going to fire me for a nose ring. Oh my God, like my nail isn't done. Like it was every little thing.
Yeah.
And like now, like when I talked to Ms. Obama, she's like, Deesha, like you were always great.
Welcome back to Hysteria, the podcast for the girlies fighting imposter syndrome. Today's guest was formerly the White House social secretary for the Obama administration and a Harvard Kennedy School fellow. Now she's the CEO of Hook and Fasten, a social impact firm, and the author best-selling book, Undiplomatic, How My Attitude Created the Best Kind of Trouble. Please welcome Deesha Dyer.
I am so excited to be here. Hi, Alyssa. Hi, everyone.
Deesh. Okay, first, I've been so excited to have you on.
Yes.
I got to ask about the book.
Yes.
Undiplomatic came out a few weeks ago. How's the release been going?
It's actually been going great. I mean, it's, a combination of like panic and exhaustion and excitement and fear and like it's all the things. And I think that, the reception has been way better than what I thought it was going to be, especially like in our political climate. I was waiting for like MAGA weirdos to like come out the woodwork, right? But it's been like super received by so many people. And I'm so thankful that people are like, this book is very messy and it's a reflection of my life. I'm like, exactly. So I'm happy that it's like really hitting with people. So that's great.
Well, I want to level set for the audience because we aren't just colleagues from the White House. Yeah. We have a special relationship. We have known each other since the day you decided to apply to be a 30-year-old intern in the White House, which is a thing. And I want to flag it because most people who decide to intern are like 19 or in their early 20s. So, Deesh, can you tell the story of how you went from a hip-hop reporter and community college student to working in the White House?
Yes. I mean, I can't believe it's been that long. It's been like 15 years, which is nuts. So I dropped out of college the first time and I was like 17. I wasn't feeling it. It wasn't my thing. I was broke. And I decided to kind of just like follow the things I love to do that made me curious. I was like, I'm going to just get jobs at the mall and then like start writing about hip hop because women were so underrepresented in the hip hop culture as far as just like producers and breakdancers and, beatboxers. And so I was like, I'm going to write about women in hip hop. And so I started doing that, which led to this, amazing career being a freelancer for a number of years. I was always a community advocate, started with HIV/AIDS with Ryan White in the 90s. So I always like kept one foot in community. And then like around 2007, when I decided to go back to college, to community college in Philadelphia, the only college that would accept me, Barack Obama started, he started appearing on my screen. And I was like, who is this like rando person that's on my screen, like running for president? And he's so charismatic. He's like saying things I actually like pay attention to versus other politicians. I'd be like, not interested. I don't even know who this person is. And he was Black. So that was like obviously a plus. And I just started like following the campaign but I didn't know anybody. Like I didn't know how I can get involved. I was too broke to donate. I didn't have any time. So I had all these jobs and I was going to school. And then I got an application for a White House internship. And I was like, well, what is this? Like, I was kind of like, what is an internship? And like the first thing it said was unpaid. And I was like, I'm sorry. I can't afford this. But I was like, you know what? The application doesn't cost anything. So I'm just going to put the application in, see what happens. And I got it because someone sent it to me and was like, Deesha, you mentor all these young people in the community. You should send this to them. And I was like, I'm not sending it because they're competition. So I'm just going to apply myself.
Right.
And got the position in scheduling in advance, which you were the leader at the time. So that was that.
So you know what the thing was, Deesh, is that, and I feel like you employ this too. I am not someone who's like very pedigreed educationally. Mm-hmm. I went to public school, worked my ass off when I left, didn't get the jobs I wanted when I graduated. Mm-hmm. And so when I saw your application, I was like, she fucking wants to do this. Like, why would we say no? And so you came and what most people, which is not the story for most people, you were so fucking competent. You were such a, and the thing about it is that, and I kind of feel like I learned this from Barack Obama and I saw it in you. he was like a deeply curious person.
Yeah.
Right. And so like whenever I meet someone, I'm like, I'm curious. Like I was curious about you. I'm like, hip hop reporter.
Yes.
She's fucking doing this. Like, yes. And for me, even now to this day, when confronted with someone who I don't agree with, I definitely lead with curiosity and try to figure out more about the person than just being like, oh, I think you might be a bad person. Like that's just not the point. And so you came to the White House and my deputy, my esteemed beloved deputy, Danielle Crutchfield. I was like, how's Deesh doing? And she was just like, she's fucking killing it. And so you were not an intern for very long.
No.
You got hired quickly.
Yes.
You did not, which you didn't even believe was happening.
I did not believe.
And then once you got hired, I was like, there's more for her. You ended up becoming White House social secretary within what, like 3 years of being an intern?
Yeah, well, it was 4 years without being an intern. Yeah. And
okay.
I mean, and to be clear, like I didn't know. I was like, I don't know how this all works. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like the foundations of like, I know how to like show up to work. I know how to work hard. I'm going to learn. That was really like the core of it. Like there was no political anything on my resume. Right. But I was like, hey, like I'm here for the same reasons, you know, Barack Obama ran, like to make everything better. Like I was a community organizer to bring people in. So I was like, we like have the same vibe. Like, and so once I got into like the White House, I was like, oh, like I'm in this department where I was like, this is, I mean, I feel like we had the best department. So I was like,
we had the best department.
We really
had the
did.
best department.
I don't care what people say. We really did.
It was, and you want to know why we had the best department? Because I don't think I looked at people's resumes really. I wanted to see who they were as people. And by the way, I think every single person who has ever worked for me had customer service experience, which I believe is clutch because constituents are customers. And so if you can't, and in our department, if you're going to a town where we're bringing the president and we need people's help to put it in like events together, well, they're customers. We want to treat them and have them leaving. Like, I don't know if you remember, but because we were such nerds, our tagline, our like team motto was like, leave it better than you found it.
Yeah.
Like go into a community and leave it better than you found it. But like Deesh, you did all of this. And the wildest thing I think about your book is that as extremely successful and beloved and respected as you were in both the East and West Wing, which is not easy because we all know Mama Obama was tough on West Wingers.
Yes.
And you write in the book about imposter syndrome, 100%. Which is also something I experienced, but you wrote about much more eloquently. How has imposter syndrome manifested in your life?
Yeah. You know, the thing is I always tell people, like, I did all of that. And that's why I was so honest in the book, because I'm like, your accomplishments and achievements are wonderful and amazing and super dope. But at the end of the day, like, you have to keep doing them to feel like a high of validation and worthiness. Right. And I'm like, I was like addicted to that. And so for me, imposter syndrome started when I was young. Like, I went to a boarding school and like was told, like, you're loud, like, you're too bold, your attitude sucks. So all of these things I was told, I believed them throughout like high school, throughout like my first job, throughout dropping out of college. And so I definitely was just like, I'm just like a fluke. Like, it's a fluke that I'm here at the White House. Like, they must have just like literally like not found anybody else. And now to say that sounds so ridiculous, because like, who did not want to work there, right? But like, that's literally what I thought. And I was like, they have no other people to take this job. And so like, or they're going to find out, like I always say in the book about interviewing with you, I'm like, Alyssa, I don't have a college degree. It's just so we're very clear. So you can just like hang up the phone now, go back to your life, enjoy yourself. Thank you.
And what did I say?
That was not your answer.
That was not my answer.
That was not your answer. And it was just like, for me, I try to tell people like imposter syndrome, like it made a home in my body. Like it was like, I'm your best friend sitting down having a drink. And I didn't even recognize like that it was a bad thing, because I was like, this is my friend. Like, this is like my clutch. This is like my security blanket. Until like, number one, people started, like young people would look at me and be like, you're so confident. You're so amazing. And I'm sure you got that too. And you'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, you're
be like, I'm a government employee. That's all I've ever felt.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm not like, what are you talking about? And so I started to realize that like, I needed to get it together. And I think that once it started affecting like my mental health and physical health, I was like, I'm like legit like this, it's going to kill me. Like, I need to like get my shit together. And so I think that is like really when I like tame the beast of being like, let me go to therapy. Let me dig up these roots and like throw them away. And now I'm so thankful because I'm on the other side. And like, it still pops up, like, obviously, like, you know, but at the same time, it's like a guest that like comes to the door and I'm like, no, thank you. Like, you know, somebody trying to sell you shit, like, no, thank you. And then they bounce versus like coming in and having dinner. So that's how I always describe it.
Yes, that is the best way to describe it. Because like also you and I are people who have, since we left the White House, done things that aren't really adjacent. You know, like we're not political consultants. It's not, you know, we don't do that. And so every time I do something new, I mean, my first week when I started working at Bed by 8, my production company with George Stephanopoulos and Ali Wentworth, my first Zoom with 20th Century, which is where we have where the pod is, I came so prepared. I wrote the longest memo. I was like, I just don't want them to think I'm a fraud. I mean, like, even still. And then literally they had to be like, girl, can you take it from a 10 to a 5? You're good. And I was like, okay. But Deesha, you have actually gone on, mentorship has played a huge part of your life. And so you've always been a mentor. What does it mean to you now that you've identified and sort of self-treated for imposter syndrome? What does it mean? Like, what does meeting to young girls now that you have tended to yourself?
You know, it's so interesting, Alyssa, because I'm still Deesha from Philly. Like, I'm still this regular person. And these young people, like these young girls, especially young Black girls, they're just like, your book, like, I felt so seen. I felt so like heard. I felt like I had a friend. And to me, like, being honest about it, like, I'm not going to like give you bullet point. Like, I'm not going to do that because like, it's hard. Like, it's hard work to like kind of get over all these things that you've always been told about yourself as a woman, as somebody who's Black, as like whatever. And so now my reframing is just like, they are literally looking at me and like, I don't want to look in the mirror and be like, you know, I'm saying one thing, but feeling another. So I have to get this treated. But I also am super careful that I'm not like, at the end of the book, I got married. I'm so happy. Everything's great. I'm like, no, like I actually applied for a job after the White House that I really wanted and didn't get it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, let me be honest that it still shows up. Right. And so I think that being with these young women, like they gravitate towards me. And I think part of it is because like, I'm so real about how I talk about it. Yeah. And I'm just like, I don't let it control me anymore, but I'm not going to lie to you and be like, I got the social secretary position. So like, I was on top of the world. I was just like, oh my God, this hair's out of place. Oh my God, they're going to fire me for a nose ring. Oh my God, like my nail isn't done. Like it was every little thing. Yeah. And like now, like when I talked to Mrs. Obama, she's like, Deesha, like you were always great. You know what I mean? Like we never...
Once you leave and go back, it is a shocking, like when you get a little distance from your life. So I had not thought about this in a long time, but when I was reading your book for like the 5th time, because I've been reading it since there were galleys, I was like, what was my first, because my like real moment of imposter syndrome was when I became deputy chief of staff, because President Obama was like, yeah, like you're doing this. And I went to our boss, Pete Rouse, and I was like, here's a list of 5 people I think could do it better. And Pete was like, God damn it, you're the only person who thinks you can't do this. Shut the fuck up and take the job. Like, you know, Pete Rouse, you know, that's how he talked. That is how he talked. And that'd be
the end of the conversation.
And that was like, it. Then he literally looked at me like, there's the door. You've annoyed me. Go. And I was like, okay, fine. So the first week I took over, I was at David Axelrod's going away party, and the Situation Room called me and they were like, ma'am, we have to evacuate American citizens, AMCITs, from Cairo. And I was like, why? And they're like, Hosni Mubarak is being deposed. And I was like, what do I have to do with that? They're like, you have to evacuate them. And I was like, cool. I'll be in. Like, is that what's happening? I'll be in. Literally walked into the sit room and was like, okay, gonna be honest, don't know how to evacuate people. Can we like get a primer going here? And you know what? I also found that not being a big swinging dick and pretending like you knew what to do actually got you much further, because they were like, okay, this nice lady in the Care Bear sweater is really, she's trying. So we're going to help her out. So got all those folks from Illinois out. Do you remember your first big social event that you had to produce?
I mean, Alyssa, it was definitely the Pope. And it's so funny when you say that story.
I thought it was the Pope.
I could see your face actually when you were doing that. That's hilarious. But I would say the Pope, because Jeremy Bernard, who is the first openly gay male in the role, was my predecessor. And he was like, I'm going to be leaving, blah, blah. And I was thinking, okay, like, leaving like later in the year, like, okay, we have time. And he's like, oh no, I'm leaving in May. And I'm like, well, the Pope comes in September. And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, who? I'm not Catholic. I don't go, what do I need to do? Do we got church? I mean, I was so lost when they were just like, you're in charge. And you've been in a room with like Secret Service and White House communications and military office. And they're all looking at all these dudes are just staring at you. Yeah. And you're like, and they're just like, okay, ma'am, so we're going to start the planning. I was like, okay, like, and
like, let me know how it goes.
Like, let me know, like, what you need. Like, I got you. And thankfully for me, like, the social secretaries are such a tight-knit community. Like, I called Capricia Marshall, Clinton's social secretary, and I was like, Capricia, what am I supposed to be doing here? And she's like, Deesha, she was like, there are papers from when the Pope came during and I'm like, great. So I found that, and I just started doing these meetings. But again, they were basically like organizing meetings of like, do you have like your shut together? Like, do you have this? Like, you're in charge of this. You're in charge of this. And then I would brief the Obamas and be like, what kind of music would you like? And they're like, well, whatever you like. And I'm like, this is like, I don't make the decisions.
Like, they were always very solicitous of stuff like that. Yes. Like when we were doing the second inauguration, it had to be the second. POTUS Obama was like, well, who would you like to see? And I was like, can we have Kelly Clarkson? And he's like, if you want to have Kelly Clarkson, let's have Kelly Clarkson. I was like, oh my God. And then I saw her in the bathroom and I wanted to tell her that like I was like, I want to tell Kelly Clarkson that she was my pitch. And then I was like, no, it means more to her. Like they loved her and they were into it. And I was just like then too nervous to talk to her. And I was just like, never mind. But they were very wonderful and so warm about wanting to hear what we thought because they knew what they liked, but we were like a little younger, like not much, but a little.
Well, I think the other thing about it was too, is that like I was at the end. So being the last social secretary, it was like balls to the wall.
Zero fucks Dyer.
Whatever we're doing, I'd be like, we're going to bring in a DJ. Great. We're going to do this. That sounds great. We're going to bring a whole marching band. They're like, we don't know how this is going to work, but we trust you. And I'm like, this is nuts. So I'd say the Pope was like definitely my like, what the hell?
Well, and also for you, the one thing, and I want this to be like the ultimate compliment, is that when Michelle Obama became first lady, her number one priority was making the White House accessible to people who weren't like the elite political ivory tower people. And that really was your, almost more than any other social secretary, that was like in your DNA. Oh, yeah. Like 100%. You put together the most like community inspired events and made sure the guest lists were always super dynamic and people who just weren't, assumed to be joining, No,
100%. We had formerly incarcerated people.
You did.
I mean, we were just like, so I was like, everybody should come in here. Like, I was not like, I'm not opening the door. I like took off the hinges. I was like, this is like, who's available? Like, we having a party, like, who back home, who wherever. And that was like my joy. And like seeing people come to the White House was like when Barack Obama was, it was like they had hit like the lottery. Their mouths were so open. And it just was like, it was the best feeling. It was like, that's what I probably missed the most, the people and like the access of like being able to give that gift to people. That's like what I missed the most.
I agree. And so here's an interesting question that I have always been asked. Everyone always asks me, like, what am I most proud of? Like, Alyssa, what are you most proud of in the White House? And, it didn't actually hit me until after we left. A dear friend of ours, Brandon Lipo, was very sick. And we all got an email that said, treatment's not working. He's in Houston. And Deesha, I can't even tell this without crying. The thing that I looked back on in my life and was like, I did something fucking good, is when that email went out to about 15 people. Within 48 hours, about 60 people had flown and shown up in Houston. You were there. All of us, like it was, and it sounds really sad, but it was like the most joyous celebratory, weird reunion. People were texting. It's like, who's got the beer? Who's got the barbecue? And like, I think that the thing I was most proud of is that I built a team that extended and lives long past the 18 acres of the White House campus. 100%. So what is the thing you were most proud of?
Yeah, I think, and to talk about that, I remember it too. It gives me chills because I remember we had friends who just had a baby. Grant and Julie had just had their baby, and they brought they brought the baby, and we were all we took over the waiting room. I will never forget that. It was like, what are you getting for dinner? And like, we're just like Chinese, like pizza, whatever. And like, we're all just like hanging out, being able to take turns and go and to see Brandon. I remember that. But I think I would say probably the number of young women that I have put through, like the same thing that happened to me, like through the internship program that rose to the White House, that are currently in the current White House or in different leadership positions. I think that I was like, if I'm in a position to be able to bring people in, I want to do like what Alyssa and Danielle did for me. Like, I want to make sure that, like, of course, there's a place for people who are pedigreed, of course, right? They're going to get their love, like, move on. But like, I was like, I'm going to find these people, and to see the trajectory of some of these women, especially that I put through, is just like, I mean, they are just like running their own businesses or like VPs at places. And I'm just like, number one, I'm like, hire me. Then number two, I'm like, don't like look at this lineage of like the legacy that we left, like, you know, like by living in Barack Obama's legacy. And till this day, like I still get things like, I remember you came and talked to me as an intern and you told me not to give up and wrote a letter for me. And I'm just like, so the legacy, I think, and that I was able to like, you know, kind of get the catalyst of that is just everything to me. Still.
That's okay. So Deesh, this is last question. So you and I about the same age.
Yeah.
And I would like to think of this as my second act. I hope I have many acts, but what do you wish for yourself in this next act of life?
Alyssa, I would like in this next step of life, I would like to move overseas. That's my dream.
Okay.
Move overseas and live one of these like Copenhagen, Denmark lives where like you're like seeing me on my bike with a Danish like every day, not caring about.
I want tulips in that basket.
Not caring about weight, not caring about anything. I would like, and I'll work. Don't get me wrong. Like we'll
always have to work. That's who we are.
But like I so bad like I was actually going to move overseas when COVID hit. Like I so bad want to live like in Europe or Spain or Africa, someplace that I can just like breathe for a second and see what it's like to like just go somewhere and be completely thrown out of my element. Like I'm constantly like being like, are there overseas opportunities somewhere? Like I am so into it. It's ridiculous. And so that's like my next act, I hope, is like getting out of here.
Okay. You know what?
After the election, getting out of here.
I love that for you.
Yes.
Deesh, thank you so much for joining the pod this week. Yes. Everyone go buy her book, Undiplomatic. It's currently available wherever you get your books.